Recording at this point, just so I don't forget it. And it looks like Megan's still trying. John, can you hear us by any chance? John Wenzel? So we're waiting on John from New Mexico State. Then we'll have all four panelists on board, and we'll have some, maybe a few late people coming in from CSU here as well. And in the meantime, bring that up. So again, thank you for the panelists for showing up here. I know it's a couple hours out of your busy days. Hopefully you'll be able to provide us some good insight, looking into that crystal ball a little bit on those areas that we don't have access to, since we aren't in that faculty position yet, and kind of possibly looking at moving in that direction. So I'm going to unmute Megan here because I'm not sure she can hear herself. Megan, what'd you find out there?
He's going to try to call in with his phone.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So then why don't we get started? We'll let him, once he comes on, we can introduce ourselves. So again, we've got a fairly tight schedule here. We've got a couple hours. Again, I want to start this off by saying thank you to Megan for putting this all together. I'm just hosting because I'm not sure why I'm hosting. Megan, you should be doing this. But I'm going to be hosting today. Megan Blazer was the one who put this all together. So thank you, Megan, for doing that. I know it was a lot of work and kind of coordinating everybody's schedules and everything. And thank you again for our panelists. For coming on board here. We've got Maddie Hatfield from Oregon State University, Kim Ingram from University of California, Dr. John Wenzel, who we're still waiting on to come on board, but he's from New Mexico State University. John, is that you on the phone? The 575 number?
Okay, can you all hear me now?
Yep, John, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So we're just doing the intros right now. So I'm glad to have you on board by phone, if nothing else. I just mentioned your name and you came alive there, so that's a perfect timing. So again, Dr. John Wenzel from New Mexico State University is joining us by phone. And finally, Emily, is it Wilmes?
Wilmes.
Wilmes from the University of Minnesota. So if we could kind of start this off, I'm going to share my screen here and give you kind of an idea of what we're looking at for kind of this period today. The first, well, after this introduction here, the first half hour, 40 minutes or so, we're going to be asking some questions from each of the four panelists of what your position is at your institution. So we're going to go in the same order we listed there. Mandy, you first, then Kim, then John, then Emily. And what we're looking at really is, who are you, kind of what your position is, how long you've been at your university, and then really kind of how your faculty system functions, including time between the entry level and subsequent levels of advancement in the faculty area, any pay associated with the investment. Because what we're looking at is a little bit, just kind of give you all a heads up, is a little bit of what's in it for me by making this transition. Some of our concerns are that it looks like a lot of extra work for maybe nothing other than a title change, because we don't know if there's any pay associated with our particular advancement at this time, or our proposal at this time. That's to be determined.
Y'all still there?
We are. Mark, I think we've lost you.
thank you. Yeah, I'm Mandy Hatfield from Oregon State, and I am currently going through as an instructor to become promoted to senior instructor. So that's my position at Oregon State. Our promotions always come with a 10% salary increase. So regardless of what your position title is or what step you're going to, it's always 10%. The composition of our committees include 3 people from each of our schools. So one of them has to be a full professor from each. So I'm part of the College of Public Health and Human Sciences at Oregon State, and we have 2 schools within that college. And so we have 3 people from each of those, and then 2 from Extension. So within Extension at Oregon State, there's both 4-H and Family, Community, and Health. And so one from each one of those areas. So one from 4-H, one from Family, Community, Health. They're voted on. They have 3-year, they hold their title for 3 years on that P&T committee is what we call it. We're getting to a point though with our Family, Community, Health, because we've kind of moved away from tenured positions long enough ago that we're getting to the point where we have very few people to pick from that are tenured. And so we're looking at, and I could share more with Megan later too about having more of an advisor from Family, Community, Health Extension be part of that committee, since it doesn't meet the Oregon State requirement of having tenured faculty, but 4-H still has lots of tenured faculty, so they won't necessarily have that. We also have guidelines written out of what extension scholarship looks like. Someone else for a second. So that way the committee is very clear on what scholarship looks like for extension. And it's a well written out document. I shared that with Megan as well. So she has kind of like the Oregon State guidelines on what that looks like. Also, as part of the P&T committee, promotion and tenure committee, if you have relations with someone, like if you have a work colleague where you've worked with them a lot, you actually have to submit paperwork to the committee saying that how you have a relationship with this person, and then as a committee they actually decide whether you need to step down from that decision or whether you can, because of your relationship, can continue as part of that committee. But often it's something, if you have a relationship, you cannot be part of the decision. And I think the college requires at least 3 voting members be part of every decision. So there's always extra. So if people have to say, oh, I have a partnership with that person, so I can't be part of that decision, or I don't have, depending on the classifications that the person is and what they're going for, the people on the committee also have to be at that level or higher to be on the voting. So that's why there has to be at least 1 full professor from each one of the categories. And I also shared our committee guidelines document with Megan as well. So she has our very specific guidelines. But Oregon State has been really good at working with Extension so that they're part of the P&T process, and that it's very outlined how we can get promoted, because I think until about 2011, it was a really difficult thing for Extension because we didn't understand how we would do all the exact same things as a tenured faculty would do, and how that would correlate, or how our on-campus colleagues would look at our kind of scholarship. And so they've really taken great efforts to outline all of that so that we are positioned to get promotions as well. I'm trying to think if there's another question that.
I'm just wondering, Mandy, if is there like a rubric that you work with as far as the committee, or is it kind of, I mean, when we were talking about that, because considering that to keep it as objective as possible, objective as possible, do you have something along that line, like you get 17 points and you go through, or is it, and is it a majority vote from your committee, or how does that work? If you can help us with that.
Oh yeah, so if the committee has mixed, their voting is mixed, then that goes on to an additional committee, which is like the dean's associate provost, where they review the information and then make their recommendation as well. In extension, through Family Community Health, we, from our program leader, she kind of contacts us and said, hey, you're eligible to get promoted. And what she has shared with me, because I told her I was doing this, is that anybody that they have said, hey, you're eligible to go up for instructor, they've never not got promoted to senior instructor. So they're always making sure that they're really helping us so that we can be successful, because they want us to be successful too. So our program leader actually helps us through the process. They assign us a mentor that's already gone through the process, so that we're doing things in line with, it's usually somebody on campus. And I haven't heard anything about points so much. There is voting involved, but there's lots of pieces that go into that. And then, like I said, if there's a mix where they're not 100% in agreement, then it goes on to another level for the decision. And the dean always has the final say, regardless of what the committee has said. But I think that usually goes with the committee.
Perfect. So if my understanding is right, so if all the committee members say, yes, Mandy definitely meets whatever, but so it doesn't sound like there's specific benchmarks of what that means. It's like, yeah, it kind of feels like she meets that. Yeah. Or is there must be some kind of.
Yeah. So it's hard to say though, because my instructor position doesn't have scholarship included within it, but most of them do. And part of that is because of being SNAP Ed and the requirements of the SNAP Ed program. And so I think that they've left some room for, does your position, what you're doing in your position, meet your position description as well. So I think some of it has to do with the aligning of position descriptions. We also, our process takes about 1.5 years. So that from the time you say, I'm committed to go through this process, it's about 6 months when you submit your initial dossier. And then they get letters from both clients that have taken classes from you, and they take that information and then have a specialist on campus kind of couldn't take everybody's information and make it one like overview sheet of what clients feel about how you are as an instructor. And then they also have internal extension people review your work that you've never worked with before, and then they also submit letters of support. So they go through like a letter of support stages too, with different parts, the school heads, as it goes through the process. So it gets reviewed by many, many people before it gets to the P&T committee. And I gave Megan we have a very thorough list of steps in that 1.5 years of what should happen and by what time frame, and how many letters of client support letters you need to have. And our program leader actually solicits all of that information. So a lot of, I would say at least half the work is kind of on them to make sure that all of the stuff we need for our full packet is all put together. So they're really instrumental in helping us here at Oregon State as well.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Mandy. The only other thing I can think of that maybe I didn't hear, could have been when I stepped out to grab something here, is there some sort of a sabbatical component with that you all have there or not?
Once you're to senior instructor, there is you can go for a sabbatical after you reach that level. Or if you're on a different track, if you're on some extension people are on the associate assistant professor track as well. And so they're eligible for sabbatical as well.
And is that only after they reach that top tier?
I think, no, they can go after they reach the first one. So in Oregon State, all the positions have 3 steps. So it's instructor, senior instructor 2. So we've kind of set them up. And then we also have a newer category that most of the new extension people are getting hired on, and they call them professors of practice. Mm-hmm. And so they also have the associate assistant and full as well. And so more of our new employees are pretty much all getting hired in that category and moving away from the instructor title for extension employees.
And forgive me, so where did you say that they can actually start?
I think it's once you meet the first promotion step is so
okay.
that you're eligible for sabbatical, sorry.
And are there time frames allotted with that? Like, is it 3 months, 6 months, 4 months, 1 month? We're trying to figure that out ourselves as we put ours together. So I'm just kind of curious.
So ours depends on what pay you want. So if you want to do 60% of your pay, you can do a whole year. If you want to do 75% of your pay, 8 months. If you want to do 85% of your pay, it's 4 months. So it's kind of up to you and how you want your pay step kind of like to work and how long you want to go. So it's up to you and how you want to work that, but that's the structure they have set up here.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much, Maddie. I really appreciate that. We're going to go on to Kim. I'm just going to really quickly share my screen here again to kind of show you some of Maddie's. So this is Maddie's information here. Hopefully you should be able to see that. And as she was mentioning, I think all of our presenters here have shared stuff with Megan. And so what we will do is on our website then, which is, for those of you who don't remember, it's right here. I sent it out. It should be in the email I sent out this morning, but it has all this information. What we will do is at the bottom of the page where you see the Zoom meeting with other groups, we'll have this recording underneath there. And we'll also have some kind of, we'll work with Darren to put something maybe below this with all the information, all the different forms and stuff from the other institutions here, so that we can look at that a little bit more in depth individually or as a collective whole. Certainly our committee here will do that ourselves as well to kind of dig into things a little bit more as we kind of flesh out what we're looking at doing if we decide to move forward. So thank you, Maddie, for that. We're going to move on to Kim at this time. So this is a little bit about Kim's information here. Again, Kim, all the same questions that we asked Maddie there. Let me know if you need a little bit of a refresher to know what that is. Let me stop sharing here. And hopefully, I'm guessing, Kim, are you still with us?
I am.
Oh, perfect. There you are.
Okay, so yes, my name is Kim Ingram. I work in academic HR. I'm the lead analyst and the administrative lead for all of our academic merit promotion processes. So our academics, we use a series of some different titles. So I work, yes, it's for UC, but we are based in cooperative extension. So we don't have folks that are actually on campus doing teaching type assignments. So our titles are advisors, specialists, research folks, so that we have about 5 or 6 different titles that we use. And how people are hired into those titles or how they're assigned to those titles depends, of course, on the work that is expected of them. So certain titles may or may not have a research component or may not have an administrative component. So all of those things have to be taken into consideration to determine which academic title that you would be assigned under. But
may I just interject real quickly? So is that then, but all of your extension folks are on faculty track, is that correct?
we don't use faculty names, that language, but it's very similar, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the closest similarities I would say is between our cooperative extension advisors and our cooperative extension specialists. Those most parallel the professor track kind of processes that other folks have on campus. There are 3 ranks, just as you mentioned. We also use assistant, associate, and full title. And then within each of those ranks, there's a series of steps, and it's anywhere from 6 to 9 or higher, so depending on the rank. And then there are criteria for advancement that we spell out in our ebook that can be found on our website. So for instance, the advisors and the specialists all have 4 criteria that they have to demonstrate within their merit promotion packages. So it's extending knowledge, research and creative activity, professional competence, and university and public service. And then we also have affirmative action, which is not a criteria for advancement per se, but they have to, of course, demonstrate that they are meeting affirmative action benchmarks. So So it's very clear when our reviewers, and we call them PRC, it's the peer review committee. It's very clear for the PRC when they're evaluating the cases what the criteria for each person is, because they have that in front of them. As they move through the steps, our academics are almost 100% always hired in at the assistant rank, which is the lowest of rank. Their step is determined by the number of years of experience they might have had in the program that they're being hired for and their educational level. And then in the assistant and associate ranks, you're at each step for 2 years. And then when you move into the full title rank, you're in each step for 3 years. There are some slight variations with that. For instance, if you go up 1 year as a merit, and a merit is through the steps, a promotion is to rank. So that's what the differences between there. So let's say last year you went up for a merit and you were successful, and let's say this year you've just gotten, gangbusters, you're fabulous. You can choose to accelerate, so you could go up again this year. You have to show exceptional achievement in one of the criteria for your position and above average in the other criteria. So there are ways to move up through rank and step faster than waiting those 2 and 3 year periods. There are also ways that you can slow it down a little bit. You do have deferring options depending on, it's really a situational kind of thing. It could be personal reasons or professional. If you were on sabbatical or whatnot, you could potentially defer your merit or promotion action for a year. There are pay increases with each step, and as you move through the steps and as you promote. The Office of the President is the one that sets the salaries for the year, and that is a table that is published. It's also on our website, so it is known, throughout the year what you're going to get as you move through those rank and steps. There is also, right now, we're currently under an equity adjustment. So there was an equity review. Advisors had been very closely aligned with professor salaries many years ago, and then at some point it separated. We're not really sure why, but it happened. So this equity process is now bringing extra salary to the ranks and steps in the advisor series to bring them back into alignment. So we actually have on February 1st, every year, academics must submit something. So if they have either an annual evaluation that they submit or a merit and promotion package. Again, if you're in the full title rank with a 3-year review, you could have 2 annual evaluations and then your merit and promotion. But the reason that we do this is really to help those that are new in the process, to make sure that they are on track to be successful as you move through the higher ranks and steps. And then also, it's really a matter then when it comes to your year of merit and promotion, you're just copying and pasting the information that you put together the year before into your package. So, you're not reconstructing the wheel, reinventing the wheel every time. Our peer review committee is made up of volunteers. We have anywhere from 10 to 13 members at a time. They have a 3-year commitment because, again, we do these processes every year for a set of academics. That can be anywhere from, we had 92 cases to review last year. This year we're around 75. So that's why we have that varying number. But these volunteers, we really strive to have representation from all of the titles that academics would submit from, because there is only one peer review committee, so they are reviewing all of the titles. So we have that representation of titles, and we also try to have the representation of programmatic experience. So, you've got the full gamut from 4-H to dairy to IPM to whatever, to academic coordinators. The PRC committee, they meet, as I said, every year to review cases. We also have an additional review committees, what we call ad hoc committees, and those review specific cases. So they review any academic that is going into indefinite status, and I'll mention that in a second because I realized I forgot that. Indefinite status, or if you're going up for promotion. Peer review committees do everything: merits, promotions, terms, indefinite status, the whole works. I'll go back to the terms. So when we hire in an academic, they are, for the most part, they get 3 2-year terms before they become indefinite, which is like tenure for professors. So as you're hired in your first term, you go through your merit, you get your second term and whatnot. If you accelerate, the term also accelerates with you. Let's see. So then we have both of those committees providing input into the review of the dossier. Supervisors also submit their evaluations depending on the action. So accelerations and promotions do require confidential letters of evaluation, but regular merits and first and second terms do not. So there might be that level of review. And then what happens is the PRC and the ad hocs, the PRC does vote. Each case is assigned a primary reviewer and a secondary reviewer, and then we get together as the whole committee in the spring to talk about it, to vote, and it is majority for the committee. If there are close ties, or if the committee just really can't decide, that is captured in notes, and then all of that information is sent on to the Associate Vice President, and she at this point reviews all of the cases and makes the final determination as to whether the case was successful or not. In the case, if a case was not successful, so if the peer review committee and or the vice president decide that they're not moving forward, they have 30 days to appeal that decision, and that goes to the assistant vice president. Yeah. So one step up, and then that person has the final say as to whether it goes for or not. Conflict of interest, I noticed, was mentioned. We do not assign, so if anybody who's on a PRC is a supervisor, we do not assign somebody that they supervise as their case to review, so we avoid that. We try to avoid any other type of real close working contact as best we can. Let's see. Our academics do, or most titles do have sabbatic leave. They earn sabbatic credits based on the amount of time they work within the position, and then how much sabbatic leave they want to take off depends how much credit they've earned.
Is that like paid? Or how's that done? Do they maintain their full pay and then get some sabbatical time on top of that? Is there a stipend toward that? Because we're trying to figure that ourselves how that would work.
Right. It's more like, so let's say, and I don't know the exact calculations, but let's say you've worked for 6 years and you've earned enough sabbatic credit to take 4 months. I'm just throwing that out there. It is fully paid, and that's what you would get. But let's say at that point you decide you only need 2 months, so then you would only take your 2 months and bank your other 2.
And is there a time frame that you can use those? So let's say if I've banked 6 credit, what's the time frame when you can first actually take sabbatical? Is it right out of the gate? Obviously that doesn't make any sense probably, so it's got to be after a certain time period, I would think.
Right. You have to have had at least reached indefinite status, so that's a minimum of 6 years.
minimum of 6 years, unless you do the fast track, and then let's say you're there at
Correct.
4 or 5. Okay, because it's tied to that. It's tied to the indefinite status.
Right.
Perfect. I think I understand that. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate that and your initial inputs and everything. We'll be moving on now to Dr. John Wenzel from New Mexico State University, and I will pull up his stuff. Let's see. John, do you have that information in front of you there so you know what we're actually asking you there?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. So I've got your information pulled up here on my screen, so hopefully everybody can see that. And just before you get started there, if anybody who's listening from CSU or other places actually as well, some of the panelists, if you have specific questions of maybe one of the panelists or something that didn't make sense or you want some clarification on, please type it in the chat box and we'll make sure to go back to that at the end of the Q&A framework here. So Dr. Wenzel, it's off to you here, New Mexico State University.
Okay, well, thanks for being here today, and I'm sorry you can't, well, I'm not sorry you can't see me. It's probably a good thing, but y'all know who Tom Selleck is?
Yes.
I don't look like that, okay? So anyway, and I appreciate the chance of being here, and unfortunately, I may not be real helpful for you. I spent 28 years in private veterinary practice before I joined the university, so I'm very familiar with that and not nearly as familiar with the university systems. But I joined New Mexico State in 2006, and I joined as an assistant professor, and I have been through the promotion and tenure process that we have here. I'm an extension specialist. We basically have two separate faculty type positions. One is county faculty, which is placed out in the counties, each county of the state, and they are tenured faculty positions. And then we also have a Department of Extension, Animal Science and Natural Resources Department, which houses the extension specialists here in the university system. And so I am pretty familiar with the extension specialist side of things, but not nearly as familiar with the county faculty positions. So what ends up happening is once, and most of this is true for the county faculty too, that when you are hired on, you have a 6-year time period. After 6 years, you are required to submit your promotion and tenure document and to be evaluated for both promotion and tenure. And each year in the spring, there's what's called a spring review. Our department and county faculty each have their separate P&T document review committees. Our extension specialist committee is made up of 4 members that they cannot have any administrative duties. They have to be a specialist and either of equal or higher rank than what you're applying for. And so what they do is once you have applied for promotion and tenure in this system, you are evaluated by the departmental P&T committee, which is made up of your peers. That goes on to a college committee, which is made up of various folks that are inside the college here, and then it goes up to the final committee evaluation. There's 3 tiers to it, and that goes to the provost. And so each document is reviewed by a departmental committee, a college committee, and then the provost. And so in the spring of each year, about March, anybody that's interested can submit their document for spring review, and the P&T committee meets and helps fine-tune it. So the way our criteria works, and I see that you have the opportunity to look at some of our paperwork there, but everything is based off of what's called an allocation of effort document. And that's a document that's agreed upon by the employee and the department head. And on that allocation of effort, you describe what your focus is going to be. You know, maybe there's a research component, maybe there's a service component, maybe there's an academic component, or whatever it might be, but you and the department head agree on that, and then everything centers around that. So your document The other thing is each year we submit a performance evaluation that it's an annual performance review that looks at, based upon the allocation of effort, did you meet the requirements, the goals that you set forth in your performance or in your allocation of effort document? Did you meet those goals, and how did you do it? And then the P&T document that you submit each spring is the document that's going to be submitted. The Promotion and Tenure Committee's duties are to make sure that your document supports everything that's been outlined in your allocation of effort and your performance evaluations. Are you meeting the benchmarks that have been set for you to receive that promotion and tenure? And so the document is fine-tuned by the committee, and obviously suggestions made to help you tell your story better or make it clearer in the points, and especially from a departmental standpoint, which is important for us as extension specialists, because obviously academic departments don't understand that we spend a lot of time driving. And so the departmental committee, those are your peers, and so they understand that you gave 55 presentations out in the country, but you don't have 15 publications. And so that's an important side of things, so that your department is who agrees on the criteria set forth for promotion and tenure: number of publications, number of presentations. All of that is agreed upon. And then your responsibility as an employee is to, one, get your mission set out between you and your department head of what you're going to do, and then document everything that you've done to support your position, to say, yep, I got it done this past year. And then each year you put that together into your P&T document and you submit it for promotion. The departmental promotion and tenure document carries probably, I guess, the strongest voice. So generally speaking, from a historical standpoint, if the departmental committee recommends both promotion and tenure for an assistant going to associate, generally speaking, that's supported throughout the process. There is a step when the promotion and tenure document is submitted to the college committee, of which the dean reviews that as well. There's an opportunity for the department head to defend that application for promotion and tenure. And so there may be some extenuating circumstances, even if the departmental committee recommends promotion and tenure, there still is that process where the department head goes in there and supports that effort, so to speak. And so then once it goes from the college committee up to the provost, and the provost, he reads every word of every document, and generally speaking, they're supportive of the efforts and follow the recommendations made by both the department and the college. So the departmental committee, their job is to try to make that document foolproof before it goes up the chain. That's really what the reviews are about. And I've served on that committee, and so we have an outstanding chairman of that committee who is very detail oriented. And there were things like, for instance, in the document, and I said, oh, they should have said that. He said, it's not your place to tell them how to do their document. It's only to evaluate, does the document tell their story adequately enough that it'll support their position. And so I think that's a very important part of it. With each advancement going from assistant to associate and associate to full, those are the only two promotions that are available to you. And each of those promotions carry a pay increase of 15% of the median salary of that rank you're moving into. And so it is an opportunity for a pay advancement. I did ask about the sabbaticals because I've never even heard that question before. And I found out, yes, we can take a sabbatical as a specialist, not as a county faculty, but as a specialist faculty. They do have the opportunity for sabbaticals. I don't know how it works. I didn't even know that there was such a thing. And so really and there were some other things, well, I guess we'll get into some of those earlier about how the mentoring system and all that stuff works. But for the most part, I think a new employee, what they need to do is make sure that their allocation reflects what their job is really going to be, which there has been some problems with that because they put on a 25% research component because they think that's what they're going to do. Well, a 25% research component carries a lot more responsibility for peer-reviewed publications and stuff that requires a fair amount of work. And so that allocation of effort is a really important document to say, like for me, I'm a 100% extension, and I have I think 5 or 10% administrative duties, but everything else is just extension, which is typical what an extension specialist would do, which is going out and supporting county faculty and the producers in the state. And then the performance evaluation is an annual review of how did you do this year, and the P&T document is an accumulation of that, and the substantiating documentation to say I have performed at a level that's acceptable.
All right, John, sounds good. The only thing I didn't hear from you was the time frame between promotions. So going from assistant to associate to full. Is there a minimum amount of time? Is there like a...
Yes.
Okay.
So to go from assistant to associate, you must submit within 6 years, or by 6 years you have to submit. Then after that, you may stay an associate the rest of your time, although that is, with our new dean, he's kind of discouraging that. He's trying to encourage folks to go ahead from associate to full, which obviously would help us, because right now, like our promotion and tenure document, we're not a very big department. There's only 8 members in it. And so we don't have enough full professors to fill our P&T. So we have to pull in full professors from outside of our department to help us in the P&T process.
Perfect.
And which it isn't bad, except that there's still, sometimes you get into, like we're pulling some plant folks, extension plant sciences that have a little different outlook towards us in the livestock side of things that spend all our time driving.
Okay, so on that, so it sounds like you have to submit by 6 years, or what? You're out of the system, they boot you? And then also...
That is correct.
Oh, really? Interesting. Okay. And what is the earliest that you can submit? Is it like 3 years, 4 years?
Yeah. Well, now, so for the initial promotion from assistant to associate, which is your promotion and tenure opportunity, you only get one opportunity. If you fail with that, then you are not renewed. So
Okay.
at the end of that fiscal year, you are let go. Now, from going to associate to full, you can submit each year.
Okay.
Until now, obviously, the criteria is much more rigorous to go from associate to full. It includes a lot of national components, like you need to be nationally known, hold some national positions, stuff like that, to go from associate to full. And so, but there are no penalties for early submission or submitting every year. And so as long as you continue to make the changes, eventually you should be able to be promoted from associate to full. But that initial one is just pretty important, because you have to do it by 6 years. And if you are not successful, then you have to find another job.
You know, and is that, I just want to be clear, is that not only for specialists, but also for the county track as well?
As far as as far as I know, I believe it is true for the county faculty as well. To be tenured, you get one shot.
Yeah.
Now, we are having a little difficulty, because one of the things here several years ago, our county faculty, they added in the requirement that they must have a master's degree, which has backfired miserably, because now we have many open positions because we required a master's degree, and I don't really feel like that's fair, and in my opinion, but also that's contributed to a lack of filling positions for us to try to find somebody with a master's degree.
Right.
So I think that's a mistake that we made.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Appreciate that intro there.
Yes.
We'll now move on to Emily Wilmes from the University of Minnesota. Here's Emily's, just kind of her background there until Emily pops up. I'm going to stop my share. Emily, are you ready?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Oh, we can see you too. Perfect.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us and for inviting me to speak on this. I talked to Megan about it a little bit, and I said, well, I hope I can offer some good perspective here. But yes, so my name is Emily Wilmes, and I am with University of Minnesota Extension. I am a local extension educator, so I work specifically at the county level. I'm in a little bit of a unique position in that I cover 3 counties. Most of our local educators cover just one sometimes two. I'm also unique in that I have a specialty. So I just do livestock, primarily dairy and beef. Typically for our local educators, they will work in their 1 or 2 counties and do 3 program areas, livestock, crops, and horticulture. But we have what's called a tri-county arrangement. So it's 3 counties that all pay in for 3 educators with specialties. So we have a livestock person, a crops person, and a horticulture person. So we're a little different, but we're still considered local educators and operate that way and are paid for with county dollars. So let me see here. I've taken extensive notes, so I hope you're ready to listen. I am mindful of the time, so I'll try not to yap too long here. But our system, extension in Minnesota functions kind of at 3 levels as far as staff or faculty are concerned. So that would be the state level, the regional level, and the local level. So at the state level, we have our state specialists, and those would be people, they're all faculty within a department at the university that have extension appointments. So as far as, they're all tenured or tenure track. So they do the traditional university tenure system, and they just happen to do some extension work on the side, basically is how that works. And then we have the regional positions and then the local positions, which is what I am. So regional and local. Externally, we are both referred to as educators. Internally, local people are still educators. The regional people are at the extension professor title. And so, where was I going with that next? So basically, for promotion, we have 2 sets. So either you are an extension educator without rank, which is what I am, or you're extension educator with rank, which would be the regional folks. And basically where that division comes in is also due to degree requirements. To be a local educator, you need a bachelor's, and to be a regional educator, you need at least a master's. Now, we have local educators with PhDs, but they're still considered without rank. But so that's kind of where they make that division. And also our regional educators do have an expectation that they will be doing research or be PIs on grants, basically. Whereas local educators, we do not have that expectation. We are actually not encouraged to be PIs. We can be involved in grants and research and that, but usually as a contributor or collaborator, not as a PI or co-PI on those. So how it works for both rank and without rank, when you start with extension, basically your only requirement is that you need to apply for and get promotion within 7 years. And kind of similar to what some other of the panelists have said, we kind of have 3 levels. So you start, so like I said, externally, I'm just an extension educator. But internally, I'm an assistant educator. I don't think I mentioned this. I've been with Extension Minnesota for 5.5 years. So I have not gone through promotion yet, but I am gearing up to do so. So this is kind of good too for my education and just what I've been gathering as I prepare my materials and prepare to put forth my intent to apply for promotion. And so within 7 years, we need to go from assistant to associate. And then you have another 7 years to go from assistant to full. And then it's my understanding, I could be wrong, that once you're at full, you can reaffirm that rank after 7 years, although I don't believe you're required to do so. But like I believe John was saying, basically after that 7 years, if you apply for promotion, if you don't get it, you're terminated. And if you never apply, you are also terminated. So you have to, something has happened within that 7 years. I've talked to my boss about this at length, and he cannot recall a situation whenever somebody went up for promotion and did not get it and continued on to the next level. Sometimes the review committee will push some things back and some things have to be redone, but they do a pretty good job in Minnesota of, making sure you get through and can get through to the next level as you make your way through promotion. One note on that 7-year period, you can get a 1-year extension. And they call it the promotion clock. So when you start, your promotion clock starts. The clock will stop if you need to go on family or medical leave. So for 6 to 8 weeks, it'll stop then. Also, you can request, this doesn't automatically happen, you can request a 1-year extension to your promotion clock for the birth or adoption of a child, or also if you are taking leave to do long-term care for a spouse or family member as well. But as far as I know, most people, even if they're do give birth or adopt or have something like that, most of them don't ask for that 1-year extension because they usually set themselves up that they can still get it done within the 7 years. And even like I will submit my intent next summer, so I'll be just at the 6-year mark. So some people do it kind of early too. I don't know if there's a minimum for when you can do it. But let's see what else. So I know there was a question about committees, so who reviews your things. So the committee is appointed by our associate dean, so that would be the head of the specific program we're in. So for example, I am in AFNR, Ag, Food, and Natural Resources. And so our associate dean will appoint our committee, and it's made up of at least 3 educators of a higher rank than the person. So fellow assistant educators could not be on it. It would have to be an associate or a full. So at least 3 educators of higher rank, and then 1 tenured or tenure track faculty that has an extension appointment. So for example, for me, mine will most likely be one of our faculty members from the animal science department. And then I should note, it's not necessary for the committee members to know the candidate. You know, Minnesota Extension is not huge, but big enough. You usually know most people by name, but you don't necessarily know them super well or personally. But it's not necessary because, like I said, the associate dean, they kind of find that committee. And then they also do have some, and I'm not super clear on this, I'll be honest, because there's some differences if you're going without rank or with rank. But they do have some peer and external reviewers that they have that review your items before the committee sees them. And as I do understand from reading our guide on it, for without rank, so local educators, you do an external reviewer, and so that you work with your boss or your program leader, and that's typically a stakeholder or multiple stakeholders that do that. And then also we are, I don't know if I want to say required, but when you're going through the promotion process, you are assigned a promotion mentor. So a fellow educator who has already gone through promotion, and they're just kind of there to guide you and help answer your questions. Another program that we have, it is optional. They're called PEGs. So we have the Promotion Action Group, and PEG is offered every 2 years. So if you're considering, well, no, you have to be applying for promotion within that 2 years. And it's basically for any educator from any center at any level. And it's a cohort, essentially. And so they work together for about 5 to 6 months, as I understand it. Basically just going through the different components of what's involved in promotion and kind of there for support, you know, like a cohort would be. I will say it has appeared that the PEGs typically seem to favor those educators with academic rank. I know educators without academic rank who have started in the PEG and then dropped out because while the system is somewhat the same, some of the specific requirements and the areas we need to highlight in our promotion materials are not the same. So that is something to note. So I don't know that the local educators get much out of being in a PEG. And I've talked to my program leader, my supervisor, about being in one. He said, I don't think that's necessary. I don't think you'd get that much out of it. So just a note on that. Let's see. So I have, these are multiple little Post-its. So I'm trying to see what I've got here.
Just for clarification on a couple points. So is there, I'm assuming there's a pay advance going from the associate or assistant to associate and associate to full. What, do you know what that is? Is it a percentage or is it a?
I do not. I know, what I do know is it kind of operates on a scale. So every year, I think like most extensions, every year we get a small raise that's typically 2 to 3% for inflation and you know, whatever that may be. And so for example, for like a local educator where we we need to have a bachelor's degree. That's our minimum degree requirement. Since I've started with Extension, I have earned a master's degree. So when I go through promotion, I will be eligible for a higher raise than a coworker or colleague who still has a bachelor's but has not received a master's. So it's not a set amount because they do kind of use a sliding scale based on, you know, other things you have done and yes, then achieving a master's. So if you get a master's, you don't instantly get a raise. You're eligible for a higher raise within the promotion system.
Perfect. And then I guess on the sabbatical, do you have access to sabbatical? And if so, when and how long?
That I honestly do not know. I don't believe so because I've never heard anything about it. So I don't think that as a local educator, we have access to that. But I honestly don't know.
Perfect. So I think that's good for now. We're running a little bit behind time here from what at least the agenda says. And the agenda is just one of those things that it is. I just want to look at the chat to make sure we've didn't look through this. I've heard some statements about campus staff serving to support the extension promotion process. On the flip side, does campus ask time of you to serve on campus type committees? This is kind of the whole group. And also I've served on graduate review committees for the extension. Oh, I see that looks like Connie maybe, Cecil. So just some conversation about what's your time commitments to things and on these committees, you know, once you get to the next tier, so you go from assistant to associate, then are there requirements for each of you to then start serving on committees and stuff like that? I would think some of that would start playing in.
As far as I know, in Minnesota, as far as serving on other committees, I mean, like I said, all of our committees, you're appointed by the associate dean. So it's very much at his or her discretion if they're going to ask you to serve on those committees moving forward. I don't believe there's an expectation that you have to, since it's not something you volunteer for, it's something you're appointed to. But I think if you are appointed, you can still say no. But again, I'm not totally sure since I've never been through the process.
Okay, perfect. How about Kim or Mandy or John?
Sure. So university and public service is a criteria for advancement for our academics. So you are expected to serve on a committee or several committees as you go up higher in rank and step, because, you know, just as others have mentioned, the expectations for the higher are higher for the higher ranks and steps. So, but to serve on the peer review committee, you do have to have gone through the term process and have obtained indefinite status. But for ad hoc committees, you only have had to have gone through your first review, so you could still be in the term process and volunteer to be part of the ad hoc committee. Ad hoc committees only serve for that 1 year, unlike our peer review committee that serves for 3 years. But it is, you know, we definitely encourage the academics to volunteer for these because it's you know, it is a time commitment, but it is a good way to demonstrate your university service.
Perfect, thank you. Mandy or Johnny, if you want to chime in on that, you don't have to. I'm just asking if you do. John?
Yeah, okay. So a lot of the county faculty they serve on some committees. Most of them are associated with programs, especially county faculty supported type programs. So most of those committees are out in the country, so to speak. And those poor boogers that are stuck on campus, the specialists, they end up having to serve on a lot more faculty representative things and stuff like that. There's not really an expectation, but it does support your efforts to be promoted because there are sections for you to list your service to the department, your service to the college, and your service to the university. And so the opportunities to sit on like to the college would be, you know, being associated with somebody's master's committee, stuff like that are committees that are very much pro-service. There are others, of course, but those are examples of what can be done. And then there are also, like if you serve as the dean representative for a master's or a PhD candidate, why those are things that are very beneficial in your service moving towards a promotion and tenure type deal. Now, so the assistant professor that is putting up for to move to associate, there are expectations that you serve your department. And like I said, those are the smaller type committees and stuff, and there are expectations for that. It's not required, but there are expectations for that. Moving from associate to full, it is expected that you provide service to the both. At that point, it would be both to the department and to the college.
All right, John, thank you so much. Mandy, you want to chime in and share what you have?
Sure. Yeah, after you get promoted in Oregon, yeah, it's also considered service to your college, and you could be asked to be an internal reviewer of someone else's work that you don't know. So maybe somebody from the 4-H department, I would be asked to write a letter based on their dossier. And then also in Oregon, we get client feedback letters, and we have to have at least 4 of those to be included in our dossier. And what we have is I could be asked to write a letter based on their feedback to kind of sum it up. And so that's something else that we could be asked to be done as well.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So let's jump then into the next series of questions. If we could, we're going to rotate through each of you, give you each 2 minutes each to answer these questions. So it's going to be a time thing, because otherwise we're going to run out of time. And I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go switch screens here, or share my screen. And we're going to jump into the first, hopefully, question. So starting with you, Mandy, again, what are the pros and cons you experience with your system?
I think the pros of our system is that we now have a program leader that's very supportive, and a dean and college that is very supportive to get extension people promoted. They have created paperwork to really show how extension people go through this process, and to outline it to the rest of the university. And they're trying to be very inclusive of extension and bring them in as support. And I think that's through the PNT committee has actually helped that. I think cons would be the time commitment. It is a large time commitment. It's a lot of information that you have to pull and put together. And in Oregon, we switched our yearly paperwork, how we submit our stuff, our program. We switched through my working year, and that actually made it very difficult because it was very disjointed, having 2 different programs that had to pull information and put it together. So I think that was in Oregon another con, yeah, I think that's probably kind of hit most pros and cons.
Just real quick, Maddie, because we heard from John and Emily. I can't remember, Kim, if you said that as well, but I'll ask you that when we come back on. Is your system, is it, because we're looking at when you come into us to the assistant, that we aren't requiring to move up if you don't want to. Does your system require you, or you're kind of dumped out? No.
No, we don't have any requirements that we have to. I think ours is like you have to work for so many years before you can apply for promotion. So ours is more of a, you have to work for so long before you can go up to that first step, but there's no requirement that you move.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Kim, how about you? Is there a requirement? I can't remember if you mentioned that when you were speaking. Is it?
I don't think I did, but yes, there is a requirement to go through the merit and promotion process. Again, merit, there's the steps in each rank, and then promotion to the rank. You are required to move through all the way into the full title rank. As soon as you get into the full title, as soon as you reach full title step 5, then you are not, well, I should say you're not, it's not officially required. However, you do have to submit a dossier at that point at least once every 5 years to show that you're still meeting the criteria. You know, if you are, then of course you'll move on up in step. I think the cons, I think as Mandy mentioned, is at the time. I mean, we require something submitted every year, so it is a big time commitment, but we've just instituted a new online system for our academics to record all of their activities, projects, themes, and whatnot in it. So it captures all of the information that is required in the dossier and spits it out in the template form. So it's much easier to keep track of that way. I think part of the pros is that because we have that information so readily accessible, it is very easy to access it for the benefit of the organization. So if you're working on trying to secure grants or secure some sort of legislative support for something, you've got all that background information right there that you can say, we have X number of advisors working in this X many fields and these projects bringing in this amount of dollar benefit to your areas or whatnot. So that is really, I think, one of the bigger advantages.
That's great. Thank you so much. John, how about you? Pros and cons of your system.
You know, I think there's a lot of pros. I think we have a pretty good system. You know, and to clarify, to move from assistant to associate, there is a requirement. You have to do it within your 6th year. To move from associate to full, there is not a time requirement, but I expect that's probably going to change because our dean is very much feels like you shouldn't sit on your laurels, that you better do something to move. There is a performance evaluation that is required even after you reach full professor. Every year you have to submit your performance evaluation and go through a performance evaluation review with your department head. And so every year you got to show, because every year you also have to set goals for the coming year officially as to this is what I want to accomplish this year. And then obviously your performance evaluation reflects whether you made that or not. And so the cons is that when I first joined here, it was more of a quote unquote good old boy system because it's been in place for a long time. And so a lot of promotions and stuff were kind of, you didn't have to document nearly as well. If everybody liked you and, you know, you do your job and you work hard, you pretty well could guarantee you're promoted. Nowadays, there is much more accountability and it has to be documented much better, which has thrown a kink into some of those that were already in the system, because now the expectations have been increased as to the documentation that's necessary for you to move forward in your promotion and tenure process. I think those that are coming on board in the newer system will understand because the benchmarks are much clearer. It's very definite, the expectations that are made of you. And so I think in the long term, that's actually going to be beneficial because it really will be much more clear cut as to whether you're hitting the benchmarks like you should or not.
Perfect there, John. Thank you so much. Emily, how about you?
Yeah, so pros for our system, I would say the 7-year mark. I think that's a really good timeline for us, that it allows you enough time, you know, especially for somebody like me. So I came into Extension right out of college. I started with Extension 3 days after graduating with my bachelor's. So this is my first big kid job, career job, whatever you want to say. So that 7-year period is really useful. And that if you are just kind of getting started in your career, you have time to get your feet wet just to make that adjustment to working full time and all of that. So I think that's a really nice, generous timeline. And, you know, I like that it involves a lot of people within the system. I like that you get a promotion mentor. I think the formula to make up the committees is good. I do know just anecdotally, there are some people that kind of have reputations built that serve on these committees, and they're kind of known for being difficult, basically for the sake of being difficult, which we see, I think, in all areas of academia. There's just people like that. So that's maybe a con within that pro. But just having a good mix on those committees, I think, is great. And I think the idea of having a promotion action group is really great, but like I've said, it perhaps doesn't serve those of us without academic rank the best, but the concept of it I think is really great. Cons, a big one is the amount of time that I know it takes. And again, just in speaking with colleagues that I know have recently gone through this process. So basically, you declare your intent in mid-August and you need to have all of your materials in by mid-November. So that gives you, 3 months? And just in asking coworkers, most of them said in that 3-month period, they have spent 40 to 60 hours preparing their materials. So it seems like it's a very large material load, and similar to what John and I think maybe Kim was saying too, we do have performance reviews. We do a performance self-review every year. And so you can use that for some of your materials and like Along with that, you need to submit an updated CV every year. So some of that stuff is kind of already done. But a big thing is we have to write a narrative, and that needs to be about 3,500 words. And I know people just spend so much time writing that narrative, which I know they've discussed ways that they can maybe streamline this process so people aren't spending that much time on it, especially being county-based and, again, operating on county dollars. I don't think our county extension committees would be thrilled knowing we're spending 40 to 60 hours working on administrative documentation. Basically, that's what it boils down to being. One other pro I did want to mention, I forgot to. So we have kind of 7 main criteria that's looked at, but for promotion, you get to pick 3, basically, and then the criteria is broken down into primary and secondary. So you need to pick at least 1 primary, and then the other 2 can be either or. And so that's something I really like, that it's like, here's the 7 things we highlight, but you can pick the ones that, you know, you've kind of done the most work in or are the most passionate about. So whether that's program management or teaching or service or scholarship type stuff. So that's something I really like, that we kind of get to choose the areas that that we view as our strongest, and our program leaders kind of help us pick those too. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. So I just want to go back to the chat box here. So Libby, your question for Kim, looks like Kim answered that below us. So you should have that. And then Anne, your question about the requirements for merit and promotion. We'll get to that in one of the subsequent questions. So let's move on to question number 4 here, and we'll start again with Mandy. If any of your advancement programs have changed recently, and I know Oregon State for sure, what were any unintended consequences of that?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm an instructor level, but they've kind of switched to the professor of practice. But then some counties have decided to hire employees as paraprofessionals, but then have aligned them and work with other counties' people that are in the professor of practice track. But there's no promotion available for paraprofessionals. And so what we've seen is that either the person applies for a different county's position to switch over, and then you have, like, we just had that happen in our county where we had a loss of a great employee because now she moved over to do the same thing in a different county because now she's in a promotion track. So I think what the university decided was either they were going to develop a promotion track for the paraprofessionals so that they also had one, or they're going to make sure that everybody's using the professor of practice so that there is, because that's what they found. It's not a fair expectation to expect the same thing and have no promotion track. So the university seemed to be aware of it, but you know, there's always a couple-year lag and things happening, and then realizing that there's sometimes like not the system set up that need to be set up to make people feel successful.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mandy. Kim, how about you? Is there anything you want to chime in with as far as unintended consequences you can see from your system and how it works?
Sure. So, I mean, we have worked really hard in the last 5 or 6 years to really kind of standardize the process so that everybody is going through the same review and submittal in the same format, so it's much easier for reviewers. Though we have had some changes just this year, the leadership has decided they wanted the bibliographies set up differently so they can more readily identify scholarly peer-reviewed books, chapters, or whatnot. So there's small changes like that. We have had the changes where I mentioned accelerations earlier about how an academic can go up a year earlier. One of the more recent changes is we've also instituted we call it a 13-month rule. So depending on a time of year that one is hired, you have to have a minimum of 24 months to go up for your first merit. If you, let's say you were hired just a month or 2 short of that, you can, using this rule, go up early under this rule, but it's not considered an acceleration though, because if you are not successful, there's no guarantee that your term is going to be renewed. Unlike an acceleration, it will be. So there are some small changes like that. I think the consequences of initiating those accelerations and the 13-month rules that we have many more academics going up every year now. Like I said, we had 94 cases last year, which was huge for us. So yeah, people want to advance as fast as they can. So you got to kind of watch that. I think just the only other consequences I would say is that we recently brought over some academics from one of the campuses, and they had been under different titles than what we use. So if in the advancement systems, you just have to make sure that everyone is very, very clear on what the criteria is, because they were still working under the assumptions from what they had been being evaluated against now to what we evaluate them. And they were not all successful, and we're not very happy about that.
Perfect, that makes sense. Thank you so much for that. John, you already mentioned some of the unintended consequences of you guys going to a more kind of restricted or maybe data-driven system. Is there anything else that that you want to share about New Mexico State and some unintended consequences, some actions you guys have taken?
No, I think I pretty well covered it. The only thing that I might add to that is that one of the more recent changes with the buzzword of impact reporting and impacts, that really hasn't made it into our official documentation, but there is an expectation that impact reporting be included now in performance evaluations and therefore promotion and tenure documents, even though it has not been included in the language for the evaluation criteria yet. So with that being said, we have to do something to get that moved in there, because there is the expectation that results of impacts and documented impacts are going to be included. So that's something. So whatever system you come up with, make sure that it's easy for you to amend as things like this come on.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Emily, how about you on this question?
I mean, I know the question is more specifically about changes to the system, and this has been the system that's been in place since I've been with Extension. So I wouldn't say I have too much of a comment on this, but thinking about unintended consequences, really, like I already mentioned, just from the time thing. And for those of us that are county-based, we're basically taking away from our work to show how good we are at our work. That's kind of an issue that we deal with a lot. So, and
that's one of our big concerns. Have you had any feedback from commissioners and so forth for that large section of time? I'm just kind of curious.
I have not, because I haven't really discussed it with my county committees yet. It's something that I do plan on talking with my program leader about, because I do want them to be aware that it is going to be a time commitment. But I do know just in other situations, they're very focused on, yes, we understand you have some other statewide things you need to do sometimes, like if I go to conferences for professional development, but they want me on farms and in the county, and I don't blame them. That's what they're paying me for, right? So right. I have some other ideas, but I will save those for later in the conversation.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen and show what the next question is. So the question number 5 here is, this is about, do you notice many hierarchy attitudes between the different levels? In other words, do those with higher rankings have a more elitist or I'm better than you kind of thing? Or on the flip side, so that's kind of the negative piece that can come from this, and that's one of our concerns. But we're also thinking maybe there's a positive side, that those who have those higher rankings, maybe they are better mentoring the younger junior faculty or staff. Mandy, you want to go ahead and take that on?
Yeah, I actually was very pleased with, I was set up with a mentor, myself and one other person going up for senior instructor, and it helped me feel so much more successful. She was wonderful in helping make sure that our documents were formatted appropriate for our college. So the one tricky thing in Oregon is when we go up for our annual reviews, our area administrator is the one who is the one that looks over that and kind of is the one that we format it towards how they want it formatted, and ours happened to be a forestry guy. So I was always kind of inclined to format it the way he kind of led us. Well, it's a little bit different for the College of Public Health and Human Sciences, and so it was wonderful to have a mentor that had gone through the process in our college, and she helped format all my entries in a way that was the way that the College of Public Health and Human Sciences wanted it. We also have a 3-page candidate statement, and she just helped kind of narrow my focus and make sure that I got it just as polished as could be, and really help support. And I was extremely pleased with that. I've not noticed any of the hierarchy, elitist kind of feelings from anyone ever. So yeah, no, it was a positive year, and I appreciated the mentor.
Perfect. Thank you, man. Because I can certainly, as one of our concerns, we can certainly go, well, once we get that higher rank, then it's like, I'm a better than you kind of person. And we have some of that already in Colorado because of, you know, the bachelor's versus master's versus PhD, the specialist versus the county, you know, coordinator versus, you know, I mean, we have all these different rankings that do, some people tend to, you know, use that as a tool, if you will. So Kim, if you would share from your perspective.
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, what you said, there is some validity to that, and that happens here in California as well. You know, the campus-based specialist versus the county-based specialist. And, you know, as, for an academic in A&R, everyone has to come in with a master's degree. So there's maybe not quite as much in that realm, but there is some. But I would say in the advancement process and within the academics here within A&R, that I have never seen any of that kind of elitist attitude, you know, assistant versus full title or whatever. If anything, you know, one of the things that we really like to see in people's dossier is the talk of, have they been mentoring? Have they been collaborating? And, you know, we're a huge state, but we're small in numbers. And so you've got to have the academics at all the different titles in the particular programs working together, and they do that very well. So I think that eliminates a lot of that elitist type of potential feelings. We just don't have that. And I would say, as far as in the review process itself goes, that there's actually, the committees give more leeway to the lower ranks, because they know that as an assistant coming on, you know, you're going to have a lot to spend the first 2 years getting your needs assessment developed and designed and implemented, and working on establishing those collaborations. So if anything, they're a little more forgiving of some of the things that they might see in those earlier packets than for somebody who's full title, who's been around for 15 years and should know better.
Perfect. So it sounds like that's a really good point there. Well, I think if we decide to move forward with this, I think we'll keep that in mind of those advanced ranks to make sure that we have that collaborative piece and a mentorship as part of their package as well. Thank you. John, do you have something to share from your perspective?
Yeah, I do. Okay, so I have never really experienced or seen an attitude problem, because part of our success as a specialist, which all the specialists here are doctorates. And so one of the things in our criteria is support county faculty, and our promotion depends on it, so to speak. And so the collaboration out there to the county faculty is generally pretty high, because that's one of the things we're evaluated on. And so, like, for instance, I generally do approximately about 50 presentations a year for county faculty out there. And what we do is, at our extension conference, our state extension conference, we usually have our appointment books, and we try to set up as many opportunities to go to the county and visit with their producers as we can, because that is one of the things we're graded on, so to speak. And so the success of us depends on how well we work with that county. And what happens is you form relationships with county faculty, and they use you more. And so you certainly foster those relationships because you depend on it. And so I don't feel like that there's a hierarchy deal at all. And I know in the department amongst the specialists, there is none. The mentoring didn't really occur a lot. Like when I joined on 12 years ago, there, you know, everybody just kind of throwed in and did what you did. You know, you just did whatever you needed to. With the increase in accountability from a paperwork side, I believe that the mentoring has increased. And I think because the expectations, especially with the transition to a dean that holds us much more accountable and stuff, I believe that mentorship opportunities have increased amongst just in our department as well, because the junior faculty, we've got to make sure they're successful. I think it's kind of the same as what Kim said. You know, we're pretty small in numbers, and we sort of need everybody, because I don't want to take on those additional duties myself. And so, and part of the reason I think there was a little failure of mentorship, I'm the first extension veterinarian, so they didn't know what I was supposed to do anyway. It's been kind of a good thing. I do whatever I think, because nobody knows what I'm supposed to do anyhow. But for the most part, I think that the mentorship has increased, especially the last couple of years. I think it's really much better, and I don't feel like there's any attitude problems at all.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John. Emily, how about you? Final response to this question.
Yeah, I would say I don't think systemically we have any issues with hierarchy or elitist attitude. As I alluded to before, there's maybe some individual-based issues as far as that's concerned. But, you know, like I've said, externally, so to the public, to the stakeholders, to the people we're serving, we all carry the title of extension educator. That's why we keep all these other titles internal. And this is maybe my personal philosophy, but to me, you know, we're all the same because we're all just there trying to serve them and provide them with the extension education they're seeking. And I would say systemically too, we do, I think, a really good job. And I think that maybe comes from our program leaders and just from us individually when we're talking, where you aren't just a local educator, you're a local educator. You don't just have a bachelor's, you have a bachelor's. So avoiding using the word just when we're talking about different things within our title, I think that's something we're all pretty careful about. You know I'm sensitive to that because I have a master's, but there are people's bachelors that I guarantee are much smarter than I am, or, you know, better at certain areas. So no, I would say systemically, we don't have issues with that. And then on the second half of that question, I do think that, yeah, also it's individualized, but I think they do try to support that idea of mentoring I don't want to say younger educators, but the less experienced educators. So those that have already gone through promotion are always super willing to answer questions and, you know, review some of your documentation for you. And we make a point of that when we do just local educator staff developments along with our, you know, extension wide ones. And so at that, promotion is discussed a lot. And so they usually do, you know, little panel discussions or, you know, let's bring up the people that have gone through it and they'll kind of share some things or different topics related to promotion. So yeah, I think I do see a really, you know, great system being built as far as those that have already gone through it, mentoring and supporting those who haven't. It's nothing super formal. I would love to see something maybe a little more formal in that regard. Like I said, when you submit your intent for promotion, you are assigned a mentor, but it'd be great to see that mentorship relationship happening maybe even sooner than that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Eric, I do see your question here. We'll get to that toward the end here. Let me just share my screen again and look at question number 6. Have you noticed the administration or system, however you define that, looking on those who chose not to advance? So I know 3 of you, it's required. So it's like, if you don't do this, bye-bye. But even within that, do you look, is it used for those who don't advance or maybe who are not as higher in the, you know, let's say you're in the first 7 years and it's time to reduce staff? Do you see that as your ranking basically as being a qualifier for being let go basically? And again, Mandy, if you want to take it.
I haven't seen that used as a way to let go of people. Usually Oregon State has always used attrition to kind of manage budget reductions. I've never seen them let go of people. Whereas I was prompted to go up for promotion, and I asked my regional administrator, I'm like, is this something that you think I should put my time towards? Because like everyone brought up, it's a big time commitment and it does take you away from doing things within your county. His basic was, do you want to raise? Because most people do. So if you do, go for it. But I mean, it was more, it was in a relaxed manner. It wasn't like you have to or you don't have to, like kind of up to you. But if you put in that extra work, you'll get the raise.
Perfect. Thank you. Kim, how about you? You've seen anything from your time there or heard anything as far as using the rank as a mechanism for going, oh, you got all your associates out of here, only 4 going to stick around? No,
we haven't had anything like that. Again, you know, advancement is required for us, so you don't really have the option. You can defer for different reasons for short periods of time, but other than that, you have to. Yeah, yeah.
So that makes sense. Okay, thank you. John, how about you?
Yeah, pretty much the same. Since it's required by 6 years to move for the first one, but once you're an associate, you can stay there the rest of the time. You just don't have the opportunity for that pay raise.
Right.
I mean, occasionally we get a merit raise of about 1.5%, but that I think that's happened once in the last 6 or 7 or 8 years. So we basically don't get a raise at all unless you do something to promote yourself. So I think that's the incentive. Although we have a new dean, which I've made reference to several times, and I think his expectations are that you should. There's more encouraging going on, but like for instance in our department where we're short of professors, we're kind of internally encouraging some of the others to go up because we kind of need them so that they can serve on the P&T committee and stuff like that. So we don't have to bring in outside folks to sit on our P&T committee for the department.
But you haven't even heard any rumors or anything going, well, if you don't move up, if you don't go to full, then that could be used against you down the road if we need to do some reduction in staff. You haven't heard any rumblings of that at all?
No, in fact, not at all. In fact, you know, our faculty is pretty well supported the way it is. And so using that as leverage has never come up that I've ever heard.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Emily, how about you? Anything that you're aware of from your end where there's that kind of stuff going on? Or...
Right. You know, similar to John, especially since it's required, we don't really see that being an issue. And even if there are going to be cuts or something made, I would say they don't really look at, who's still assistant versus who's associate. You know, it's more merit-based or need-based. And again, you know, we operate on county dollars. So it's, you know, our positions don't go away unless the counties decide they go away because they don't want to fund them anymore. So I would say we don't see issues with that.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for question number 7. So and we alluded to this a little bit before, and so how does your system address blackballing concerns that could keep people from advancement based on their personality or not being part of the in crowd? Is there something specifically? It sounds like a lot of your systems are so contained and nurtured and mentored that there's not really even an opportunity to do that. But just in case, Amanda, you want to take that on to answer that? And again, if there's nothing, it's like, no worries at all. No blackballing can possibly.
I've not seen that in Oregon. I know that if you have any association with a person, you have to declare it because then you might not be a part. But we vote on who's on our P&T committee. So we get the choice and the vote on that, and then you have to declare any partnerships that you've had or relationships. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, the reason we ask this question is because some of us have come from other institutions, and especially on the faculty tracks, we're not, our tenure track, we're not doing a tenure track. Once I've reached that, I'm going to make sure hardly anybody else can reach that kind of thing. So that's why we're asking this question. We're just making sure that that we're not missing something when we put this together that goes, oh my gosh, if I only heard Kim say this, we would have avoided this giant black, abyss. So Kim, on that note.
Yeah, no, I have never seen anything like that. I mean, again, like Mandy alluded to too, I mean, the committees, we have large committees, we have several committees. It's not one committee making a decision. You have lots of different levels of input into a dossier case, from your supervisor's review to your letters of evaluation. So there's lots of no one person or even a small posse of people can determine that because you're not part of the in crowd, you're not going to get your advancement. It just would never happen.
Perfect. Thank you. And Joan, you kind of talked about a little bit of the good old boy system historically being in New Mexico. It sounds like some of that's switching. Have you seen that used not in you've already talked about the positive way it was done, where it's like, oh yeah, we know that, yeah, that guy's great, or that woman is great. We're going to just roll them forward without having really, we're going to do the rubber stamp. Is there anything you've seen the other way where the system's gone, it's like, we don't like that person's attitude, we don't care for them that much, even though they're doing good work, we're going to make sure they don't get advanced?
No, I think for the most part, even in the old boy system, it was really designed to try to retain people rather than try to get rid of people. But one of the things that has happened is, like we had a departmental member who was going from assistant to associate who failed, who was not successful, and he was extremely well liked. But and because there's a lot of established criteria, it was pretty easy to see why there was a failure. And it was basically with publications, which I'll address in the next question real briefly about pubs. But it was, the criteria is there. It's pretty well known. You got to do this, and an individual just didn't do it, and therefore was unsuccessful in their attempt, and which was unfortunate because it was extremely well liked. But no, I don't feel like there's been any kind of a blackballing. We need everybody we can, and so unless somebody is, which I haven't been experienced to know, somebody that doesn't do their job, that might be a concern, but I've not witnessed that at all.
Great. Thank you, John. Emily, how about you on that final question there? On this question, I guess I should say, not the final question.
I would say there probably aren't any concerns of there being any blackballing that occur, and I didn't say this before, so we do have our committees, and again, that's at least 3 educators of higher rank and 1 tenured or tenure track faculty member. And then basically, and prior to the committee seeing your stuff, you do have those reviewers that see your stuff. And then the committee makes a recommendation to the associate dean of our center, and then they review it, and then they make their recommendation to our senior associate dean, and then they make their recommendation to the dean. So it's going through several people. So I think kind of for that system of checks and balances, basically, that maybe if you, yes, by chance get some committee members who don't particularly care for you or who are difficult, but I think they do a nice job that our system is small enough, and since the associate dean is picking these people, he's well aware of personal relationships, and, if you're in the same program area or geographical area, I think they do a good job finding balance in that. And again, I haven't gone through the system, but just based on conversations I've had and what I know, there has never been any issues like this.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Mark, I would like to add, I think it's important, though, even though we haven't experienced it, to make sure you have some sort of grievance process. So in case somebody does feel like they were blackballed for whatever reason, some way that they have a mechanism for an additional review.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Kim. That's really important. Let's jump into the next question. I'm going to share this real quick. So our next question is, any of the panelists would like to add that hasn't been covered up to this point? So, again, those things that we aren't even asking the right questions because, like, oh, Mark, you don't know. You haven't asked this whole series over here. So, Mandy, you want to jump from there? Is there anything you can think of that we're not thinking of at this point, or hasn't been asked of you that you want to share?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think just having policy, making sure that you have policies and documents set up that support everything that you want done and how you want it done, I think is important. So that it's very outlined and transparent for everyone and what the process is going to be. And then you can modify it and improve it if you do see those errors. Like if you do find, oh, there's a part right here that's not really working and there's a loophole, then you can modify it and adjust it. And so you can continually improve the process. I think that's important.
Perfect. I think that's where our unintended consequences came from. And so I think we heard that from Kim of when you make those steps where you get those shorter time frames and you have all this kind of like, oh my gosh, we got all this influx, because it can create this, it's like that unintended consequences where we're going to get all these people in time. So it's a whole lot more time taken up. Kim, anything else that you can think of there?
Just sort of piggybacking a little bit on what Mandy said, I think the one thing that we do, so our review period starts for the committee in February, and the decisions are made in end of June, effective July 1. And then something we do is every August we have a summer meeting with our review committees and our academic assembly council personnel committees, and we go over things that what worked well this year in the review process and what didn't. Are there changes to the guidelines or clarifications that need to be made because, somebody is grieving based on this because of their interpretation or whatever. So it's good to have even that part of the process set up as a regularly scheduled thing so people will know, hey, I was looking through the ebook and the guidelines this year and noticed this. And it's like, oh, great, we'll put it on the list for the summer to review.
Perfect. Good suggestion. John, how about you?
Yeah, there's a few things I might jump on and visit about. One of the things that I think is really important is when you develop your P&T criteria, I think it's very important. One of the stumbling blocks that we found is that our departmental committee being made up of departmental members understand what the extension job is. But when it goes up to university, that's not clear. And when you have academic members from academic departments who feel like that if you're not peer reviewed in every publication, you're not worth promoting, they don't understand our mission is way different than that, because I can write a peer reviewed article and it may get hit 5 times, but I can send out an extension guide that will get read by 200 or 300 people. And so it's really important that when you're establishing your criteria that you look at the weight of things. And in our deal, I think we're leaning more towards making the publication of like extension guides and those types of things are as important as a peer-reviewed journal article, and in probably cases even more so, because that's the clientele that we serve. And I think it's really important that you put that on there. And also, one of the things that's important in our P&T is the letters from stakeholders. We have there's outside letters that support a candidate, which sometimes is pretty dramatic, because out in the county or out in the country, they're doing an extremely good job and they're recognized by the stakeholders, where from even a departmental standpoint, we may not recognize that as much. So those stakeholder letters are really, really important in that process. So it kind of, in summary, our process is that we have an annual performance evaluation, which is due January 15th, and it summarizes what we did the past month. The allocation of effort form, it's a simple one-page deal that says, this is where I'm going to spend my time. And, like mine is basically, I think it's 92%, or I can't remember now, 88% extension with, 5 or 10% administrative and 3% service, stuff like that, because I'm on like our state veterinary board and those things at the service. And, but because that drives the bus for the P&T document, because that's agreed upon by you and your department head. And if you agree that this is how you should be spending your time, then all your documentation supports how you spent your time. And that really isn't up for challenge. As long as you and your department have agreed on it, then your objective is to document and show that your time is spent the way you have agreed. And then there's an optional spring review where you can, somebody that wants to put up for P&T, they can send it in every spring. The P&T committee reviews it, makes suggestions, generally speaking fairly exhaustive in the beginning of changes and suggestions to the document. And then as time goes on, that's refined. So if people will submit it every spring, they can really refine that document by the time they come up. Those that don't take advantage of that sometimes are shocked, because they'll put it in the year before they're going to go up, and all of a sudden they get an exhaustive list of changes that need to be made. And if you do it every year, it really makes that right before you put in not nearly as dramatic. And because the P&T committee makes edits and suggestions. And so I think the biggest thing, and the other thing with extension, you need to figure out the weight of publications versus presentation, because obviously in the extension world, presentations carry a lot of weight, because we're out in the country. Sometimes it may only be a presentation to 5, but to those 5, it was pretty darn important that you were there and did something. And so that has a value that you need to establish in your criteria as well. What value will presentations have? So.
Yeah, thanks, John. And we've talked a bit about that. This term scholarship means something different for every position. Some of our positions are really well suited to do the traditional scholarship piece of writing a peer-reviewed article or something, or doing research, where most of ours may not be. So we're really looking at that, and thank you for that input with it. Emily, how about you?
Yeah, so I guess, a big thing I think about, and I've mentioned it a few times, is just, the biggest hang up in our system, I think, is just how long it takes to prepare our promotion materials. Like I've said, 40 to 60 hours. Just personally, I think that that's an insane amount of time. And they say, well, it should be work that's already done. And I certainly agree with that. But I think even if, you can submit supporting materials, well, you're going to spend some time sprucing them up to make sure that they look their best, right? And so I just do want to run down really quickly the documentation that we're expected to turn in, and this is within a 3-month period. They need a candidate intro, an executive summary, letters of transmittal, a position description, your CV, a narrative, which needs to be around 3,500 words, so that's about 14 type pages, and addenda, so up to 3 supporting items to illustrate your work. And then you have the option to obtain letters of reference, but of course, why wouldn't you, to get all the support that you can get? And so I do know just the narrative is what takes people so much time. And this is purely just a thought that I've had. So just an idea I'm throwing out there as you're thinking about, what you want to ask of people. I think for me personally, and I take very seriously the fact that my job title is educator. And, I got a master's in education because I felt like I was a really good animal scientist. That's what my undergrad is in, but I wasn't a great educator. So I wish that I could educate my review committee versus just hand them 14 pages. So I would love if I could give a presentation showing how I've met these different criteria that I choose, or have a shorter narrative and do a presentation, something more like a senior seminar or capstone that you might give. Again, that's just an idea, personal opinion. I think when I think of the time thing, that would save me so much time if I was able to do that. And I think of even in Minnesota for our interview process, you do a formal interview, but then you give a seminar, you give a presentation about what you want to do, or they give you some sort of prompt. And then also we have to do an application of skill. So I had to review farm records, and I had 20 minutes to review records and make a recommendation on what I would tell this farm. So some of those more practical things, I think, are a better way to show, like, hey, is this person really getting better? Are they really meeting the expectations we have for them? And that might be tricky because you would need to get pretty individualized in some cases. But I think especially the narrative, I know, is just a really, really big hang up for people. And we have people that leave extension within the first 5 years for the sole purpose that they're avoiding the promotion process. And if they leave and come back, their promotion clock restarts. So we do see that. And that kind of bums me out, that it's like there are people that feel like they need to get around the system that way because they dread the amount of time that this takes so much. I think, some time is necessary for any work to be good. But 60 hours, that's like, just thinking about it, I can feel my blood pressure going up. So that would be something I would recommend you consider, is just what are you really asking these people to do? And are you being realistic about the amount of time that they're going to need to spend doing it?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Emily. So now we're on to some of the questions we've got in our Zoom in the last 10 minutes here or so. And Eric, I'm going to go off your question. So, and this is about county. So we have at Colorado State University, in our extension program, we've got positions that are state funded. We share between state, feds, and county. And then we've got positions that are strictly county funded. So, but they're still tied to our fact, so they would be part of our track here. So how would that, do you have the same system, and how do the counties, because the counties then would be carrying that load. So let's say it's a 10% jump for us. We're looking at maybe 6,000 at each jump, 6,000 at first and 7,000 the second. Have you had those kind of situations where the county then had to take on an additional responsibility, and how welcoming are they for that? And it looks like Kim's already shared her position. So how about Mandy, if you want to share, if you've had that same similar?
Our positions are paid for by the state and federal mostly for our faculty, but I think the one person we hired as a paraprofessional in our county where they didn't have a promotion track was on county dollars. And so I think that was part of the decision our regional administrator made in choosing to pick the paraprofessional. But then we ended up losing that individual. So it was a negative. So I think, I don't think he broached the subject with our commissioners on whether that was a useful way to spend our money. But I do know that for hiring someone, the amount of time and effort it takes to hire people, it's not worth it to have somebody come in, learn the job, make all the partners, and then leave because we didn't allow them a promotion process. So I think if you put it in that framework, I think that they would understand the benefit and the reason why that would be necessary, because you'll have people jumping to those positions when they're available otherwise. I would recommend not doing that.
Good point. Thank you. John, how about you?
Yeah, so our county positions are funded through the university and the overall state extension budget. But there are certain counties that add to that and they may supply like Secretary of Personnel or other ancillary positions that are partly county funded, along with, in some of the counties, the facilities are shared, and a lot of that is funded through county positions. And of course, whoever the county agent is, and we have, most of our counties are single agent counties, so they're the agent and the program director, so to speak. In some of our larger counties, you may have a program director and a 4-H agent, of which maybe the 4-H agent is the program director, whoever's the senior agent in that particular county is. And then also in a few of them, we have family consumer science personnel that are out there as well. So basically, the county, but the extension personnel are paid through the extension budget that we receive from the state.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Just to be clear, I guess it wasn't as clear. We have a couple different, we have some positions that are completely county funded that are county positions. And then we've got positions that are county funded that are CSU positions. Those are the only ones that would be eligible for this faculty position. So those that are strictly county funded, that are county positions and aren't FTEs through CSU, they wouldn't be eligible for this promotion. The county would have their own thing. But we're talking about those that where the county sends CSU the money for their FTE, the whole funding, that, let's say we jump up from assistant to associate, and that $6,000, that would be a burden on them basically, not on CSU. So that's what we're looking at. So Emily, how about you?
Yeah, so, county-based position, that's what I'm in. It's kind of my bread and butter. So as I've already explained it, so yes, our local educators are 100% county funded. So we function basically like a contract employee. So our counties pay the university for us to be here. So like, for example, in Minnesota, like my paycheck still comes from the University of Minnesota, but all that money is from the county. There's an extension office in every county in the state. We have 87 counties, and those are all county funded. They don't all have local educators. So there's probably, I think, 22 local educators in Minnesota, and I think we cover about 30 counties or so. Since some of us are multiple counties, some aren't. And so not every county has that additional cost. They're maybe just paying to fund a support staff person and a 4-H person. Because I think we do have 4-H in every county, but like local educators like us aren't in every county. Moving into the question about, how to fund promotion and that. So we are, like I said, we're basically contract employees. So the counties sign 3-year MOAs, Memorandum of Agreement. And in that MOA, there's a price that's set statewide for local educators. So it's, 1 FTE for local educator costs this much. And then typically built into that, like I said, it's a 3-year contract. Then built into that, there's usually a 2 to 2.5% increase each year to make up for that. And so that is a set price, and it's determined every 3 years by AMC, the Association of Minnesota Counties. So that's made up of commissioners and different people. And so that set price, pays for our salaries, pays for our benefit packages, pays for, our travel budgets and those types of things. And obviously not all of that money is always used or used in the same way, since we might have newer educators who aren't getting as high of a salary. But then in some counties, there might be educators who are making higher salaries. And so it all, all this county money goes into this pool to make sure we're all paid. So basically the point I'm trying to get to, not very eloquently, I must say, is that, promotion, the idea that we'll get pay raises is built into that MOA. So the money in that MOA is covering more than just salary. And so, yes, there is money in there to pay for promotion or future promotion.
Okay, so it's in there. So that was my question. So what happens, like, let's say because you're up here, let's say you just signed this 3-year contract, but at the same time you've gone through this promotion system and you've got it. So you're eligible for a let's say, I'm just going to randomly say a $6,000 boost, but you don't get it because it's not in your MOA. Or do you get it because the university.
No, because it's already worked into the MOAs that are then, because then that money's put into the university system. So
Okay.
basically, you know, let's say in a year I apply for promotion, I get it, and they say it's going to be a $6,000 raise. They're not going to go back to my counties and go, you need to cough up $6,000 more dollars. That money is already worked into the MOA.
Okay, so that's a little bit different because it would fall back on the counties for that in our.
Yeah, no, they would not be expected to pay any additional money. That's why in those 3-year contracts, each year includes a 2 to 2.5% increase in the funding so that those funds are already built up. So there's basically this money that's maybe not spent down to zero every fiscal year because they're building it up so that when they do need to give us raises, the money's there.
Perfect. So let's jump into this next question then, which is from the Western region. I think it's a great question. Did the participation in the review process help make you better at your job? And again, Kim, thank you for answering your question already. Matt, do you want to jump in with that?
Like the review, I apologize, the review process of like going through?
Yeah, so you going from, so I think the question is, so is the process of you actually going through the process of advancement, did that make you a better at your job? Meaning, did it you know, kind of broaden your perspective, I think, to some degree on going, oh, you know what, I had really tunnel vision over here and missed these whole other areas that I could have.
No, she left. I don't know.
Oh.
She was here earlier, but I don't know. She was not there this afternoon, so.
I'm going to mute Connie there. Okay.
Well, I don't know if that, or if it was more that it made us take a look at my position description, because like I said, ours needs to align to our position description, and we realized that I needed to update it. I had brought in a lot of county funding so that I could hire more employees to do more work, and so I was supervising more employees, and so we realized that my position description didn't necessarily align with the work that I was doing, and so through my program leader and my regional administrator, we decided that we needed to update my position description. So it helped my position description come into line with what I was actually doing. So in that sense, I think that it was good to bring those two things into line, and it kind of initiated that process. And I think it probably does help you start to align what you're doing with how it aligns more, because you probably, like I said, we'd never really looked at if they were, and realized this. I had originally been in charge of 3 different counties for a while, and then realized that was still in my job description, even though I haven't been doing that for the last 3 years. So it was good to be like, oh, okay, now we're all on the same page, and all my paperwork aligns now.
Perfect. How about you, John? And make you going through the process, or not just yourself, but others that you've witnessed, has it made them maybe better at their job, or maybe conversely not better at their job? We've already talked about the time commitment that could pull them away, but what about, have you seen them make better at your job?
Well, you know, in all honesty, I think it does. And I think part of the reason is that, for one thing, you know, whether we like it or not, we're still working in a system, and that system requires that we document what we do, because there are others up the chain that have to tell our story. And what this T&T stuff does is make you focus a little better and document a little better what you are doing and how you're spending your time, so that somebody else can justify up the road that this is beneficial for the stakeholders in New Mexico and all that. And so I think in the T&T document, especially the reviews, has allowed our junior faculty or faculty that are moving towards a promotion to understand and know why it's important to sit down and write some things and document and summarize some of their basic research that they're doing. That it's not just going out there in the country and doing things and helping somebody. You have to share that stuff with somebody else. And I think it brings the focus of sharing your knowledge with not only your stakeholders, but also peers. And I think that's important.
Perfect, John. Thank you. Emily, you've got the last word. You've got a minute left here before our 3 o'clock, well, 3 o'clock Mountain Time wraps up. Do you have anything to share on that?
Yeah, and I like having the last word, so I appreciate that. Thank you. I would say that, yes, you know, I've commented on the time thing, but overall, I very much do think that going through the process does make people better at their job. Like I've said, I'm not even really quite starting to go through it yet, but I'm getting there. And I will say that really from the beginning, but especially as you hit year 3 or 4 or so, as we're doing our annual reviews, so we do a self-assessment, then we go over it with our program leaders who are our supervisors. And, you know, the criteria that we fill out in our self-review, it's the same criteria that we select from to go through promotion. And so they do a nice job of kind of, you know, dangling promotion as a carrot perhaps in front of us, you know, just to keep us motivated and really thinking about, like, here are the areas you're excelling in. And so here are the areas you maybe want to think about for promotion. And so I think that we do kind of all in the back of our mind have those different things that we're pushing towards a little bit harder, thinking about the promotion process. So, I mean, I would say that in a way it does make us better at our jobs because it makes us think very consciously about what we're doing. You know, but sometimes I am concerned that we're so focused on that. Like, are we doing it just for the sake of promotion versus are we doing it for the sake of what's best for our audiences and stakeholders? But that I'm, you know, a chronic overthinker. So it could just be that too. But yeah, I think by and large that the process very much, it does make us better because it makes us, you know, aware of, wow, here's all the stuff I'm doing. And it really does have impact and does matter.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone, Maddie, Kim, John, Emily, for being here. I'm hoping if we have follow-up questions that we can maybe send you emails or questions about those if you're all willing to be our kind of, again, our crystal ball a little bit. And again, thank you so much. And again, we're going to post our stuff for those of you here. I think we've gone through all the chat group stuff. We're going to post this all on our website that we've got put together there. Does anybody else have any last comments, questions before we, again, I just want to say thank you, Megan, for putting this team together. I think you guys have been extremely valuable for us, answering some questions, hopefully dispelling some of our concern, and because some of the big concern areas that we had out there, I think in many ways, all four of you dispelled them in your own way. So that feels good to me, but I don't want to, you know, persuade the group too much. So again, thank you, everyone. We look forward to seeing you down the road in other places, other parts, and we'll let you know kind of where our decisions are. And on that note, just to let the rest of you know, we're looking at probably sometime here in the next couple of weeks of kind of wrapping this up, compiling it together. We'll send out a survey to everybody, and you know, whether a go or no go forward with this. As we mentioned, as Ashley had mentioned before, we have to do this before the end of the year, so we're probably talking by the middle of December. So our committee of the 12 of us, I think it is on the committee, will meet together after, you know, sometime in the next, after the holiday season, I'm guessing here after Thanksgiving, and we'll kind of put together, you know, a proposal, tie things together and send it out to everybody, and then just ask for the thumbs up or thumbs down, and we'll do the majority kind of vote, I guess, and move forward that way. That's our assumption at this point. So again, thank you, everyone. We look forward to kind of moving forward with this, and have a great rest of your day.
And for everybody on there, you can certainly email me. I don't know how to send the message, but hopefully they'll get my email out to you, and I'd be glad to answer any follow-ups.
Perfect. Thank you, John.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hello?